Well, for more on this, let's bring Oliver McTernan on the program. He is the director of Forward Thinking, which is an independent NGO working to promote an inclusive peace process in the Middle East, amongst other dialogue-based objectives. Thank you so much for joining us today, Oliver. Let's start, obviously, with the humanitarian situation. We got a picture of the latest in that report there. You've been covering this conflict for a long time. Is this the worst that you've seen in Gaza in recent memory?
Yes, by all means, it is the very worst. I think we're faced with an incredible, inhuman situation. And I think Tom Fletcher was right when he said, now is the time for decisive action, or we will be judged accordingly.
So we've seen international leaders kind of step up criticisms of Israel over the past week or so, including from places where officials have been much more muted in their condemnation thus far. I mean, how do you explain that? Why now? What has changed?
Well, I hope seeing the horrendous pictures that are coming from Gaza on a daily basis, this isn't disinformation. These are coming from ordinary people who have cameras and are able to can record what's happening on the ground and to broadcast it without any interference. I think the shock and the horror of seeing those pictures is gradually penetrating. But let's face it, it's 19 months now the people of Gaza have been suffering in this inhumane way. So I think it's about time that the political leaders find the moral courage to call out what is clearly wrong and immoral.
To what extent do you think the return of Donald Trump to the White House has emboldened Netanyahu? I mean, do you think that there is a link between Donald Trump's presidency and the kind of catastrophic situation that we see today? And kind of as a follow-up to that is that there is now actually speculation that there's been some tension between Netanyahu and Donald Trump, especially as, you know, Trump is not stopping in Israel on this trip to the Middle East. Netanyahu was reportedly not a part of that hostage deal. So what do you make of the evolution of their relationship since Donald Trump's return?
Well, you may recall Biden at the beginning of this war saying there were no red lines between America and Israel. I think Trump's election for Netanyahu was seen as not just no red lines, but a real endorsement of the policies that he wanted to pursue. Now, I think the indication now is that actually Trump may be realizing that Netanyahu is leading us into a situation that will have consequences for decades to come. The meaningless daily killing that is going on at present, I fear, are sowing the seeds for an endless conflict. So if Trump realizes that, he is the only one, as the former Israeli Prime Minister said earlier today in an interview, he is the only one who can say, stop, enough, you've got to finish this madness. And I fully agree with Olmert's analysis that if Trump acts in this way, and I would think what we're hearing from his visit to Saudi Arabia and now in Doha and then going on to the Emirates, I think he's getting a very clear message that the Arab and Gulf states cannot normalize with Israel so long as occupation continues and there isn't the recognition and establishment of a Palestinian state. That's the only way that will bring security to Israel that it requires.
I mean, listening to you, it kind of begs the question as far as leaders in the Middle East are concerned, in any case, whether or not the situation in Gaza has fallen on the back burner, especially because, you know, we've seen numerous regional leaders normalize ties with Israel in recent years, notably since 2020. On top of that, I mean, we just saw Donald Trump has already visited two countries, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. He's mostly talked about business in Qatar, at least today. There have been no significant public addressing of the situation in Gaza, neither from the Arab leaders themselves nor for Donald Trump. So do you think it's still at the top of their agenda?
I don't think it's at the top of their agenda, and that is the problem. I think you're right that it has been on the back burner for some time. I find it awful when I see the daily pictures that I get from Gaza of the bodies of children and mothers strewn across the streets, that hasn't shocked our Western media and it hasn't grabbed the headlines. I fear for too long now we've seen the usual cycle from empathy into apathy. And the empathy-apathy cycle comes because I think ordinary people in Europe are appalled by what's going on, but they feel helpless. And because they feel helpless or have no influence on the political leadership, what happens then? They switch off. And then the media, I fear, picks that mood up and then prioritizes other events.
As someone that's been covering this, this conflict for so long, why do you think the international community has been so unwilling to sanction Netanyahu's government and to muster? I mean, why even use the word courage when you talk about international leaders, how they should be reacting to what's happening? Why is that something that, in your view, requires so much courage on the international stage today?
Well, I think one of the major problems is that the Netanyahu government has weaponized anti-Semitism. And people are deeply afraid that if they speak truth, if they call out what is wrong, that they will be automatically accused of being anti-Semitic. I always quote Lapid when he was the foreign minister of Israel and was speaking at the UN conference, I think it was in 22, when he talked about anti-Semitism in terms of speaking hatred of Jews, and everyone would wholeheartedly endorse that. But then he went on to say, to treat Israel differently from any other country is anti-Semitic. And that is precisely, I fear, what we have been doing over the last 19 months. Biden, at the beginning of this war, warned them not to make the same mistakes as America made after 9/11, realizing America was traumatized. Israel has been traumatized, and we've allowed it to act in a traumatized way without pointing out the immediate and long-term consequences of such actions. I do fear that what we're witnessing now is not strengthening or protecting the security of Israel. In fact, it's putting it at risk.
Oliver McTernan, we just have about 30 seconds left, but I just have one final question for you. I mean, this is clearly something that is, seeing suffering is clearly not going to be enough for international leaders for them to put more pressure on Netanyahu. So what leverage, as this visit in the Middle East continues for Donald Trump, what leverage might Gulf countries have with the United States to put pressure on Israel?
Well, as we said, Trump was the key person in telling Netanyahu to stop enough and in getting recognition of a Palestinian state, an end of occupation. I think the Saudi leadership in particular are key to ensuring that Trump takes that line of action. If the Saudis hold firm and say, look, there is no normalization unless we have end of occupation, a Palestinian state, then as a region we can work for the good of each other. I think that is the only way forward, and it's MBS has, like Donald Trump, the power to act now. We're at a historic moment where we could see historic change in the region. But to do that, I think we'll need moral and political courage.
Oliver McTernan, director of the NGO Forward Thinking, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.